Big out, and the Southerners have been hardest hit, including United States Senator Tom Cotton. They're just not used to snow down south, and I think he hasn't left the house in a couple of days. Senator Cotton, have you managed to get to your office yet?
It's good to be on with you. As a matter of fact, a lot of Arkansas got 6 to 8 inches of snow over the weekend, and then D.C., of course, got a couple feet. I was in New Hampshire Saturday. I never thought I'd go to New Hampshire to escape my places of work.
What were you doing in New Hampshire?
I was the speaker Saturday night at their first-in-the-nation presidential town hall, so I batted cleanup for all the presidential candidates who spoke earlier that day.
Well, now tell me how much. Tell me about that. I didn't know that. Tell me about what you heard the candidates talking about and how many of them were talking about national security and defense issues as opposed to economic pocketbook issues.
You heard the candidates speak a lot about national security, given the growing dangers of our world and the way President Obama's impotent foreign policy has relegated America's leadership role in the world to a situation not seen since before World War II. Of course, they also spoke in many cases about economic policy and getting people back to work at decent wages, but national security was certainly front and center on Saturday in New Hampshire.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, let me play for you. Last night they had a forum. And you've been a colleague of Senator Bernie Sanders now for a year, and that must be interesting. But he had a forum last night, and then Senator Clinton, former Secretary of State Clinton, stood up and talked. I missed the Martin O'Malley part. I was watching Downton Abbey. And they move at about the same pace. Nevertheless, here's what Hillary Clinton's first question was, Tom Cotton.
It feels like there's a lot of young people like myself who are very passionate supporters of Bernie Sanders, and I just don't see the same enthusiasm from younger people for you. In fact, I've heard from quite a few people my age that they think you're dishonest, but I'd like to hear from you on why you feel the enthusiasm isn't there.
Now, Tom Cotton, I have two questions for you. One is, how would you answer a direct attack on your character that way? You've been a candidate 3 cycles now, and you know a little bit about this. And number two, you led young men, and I assume women, in platoons, some of which were in combat zones. Are they as cynical about political people as this young man was?
Hugh, I would answer both of those questions in a similar way, which is don't have a decades-long record of character assassination and prevarication and lies, and you won't be perceived as dishonest by the voters. That's Hillary Clinton's problem. That's why a strong majority of American voters do not view her as trustworthy and honest. And that kind of behavior by politicians, unfortunately, do make not only service members but also Americans cynical about politics. It's always healthy to have a degree of skepticism about elected leaders, but the cynicism we see is unfortunate. But people like Hillary Clinton and the way she acted, for instance, in the aftermath of the Benghazi attacks, helps feed the cynicism that so many Americans feel towards their politics.
When you were a lieutenant and a captain in the Army and leading, again, small unit combat patrols, those young men and women, are they cynical about politics generally or just about individuals?
So they're certainly skeptical about political leaders, but again, that's a part of Americans' political tradition as a skepticism towards elected leaders, and that's healthy. But the cynicism is unfortunate. In my experience, though, most service members were only cynical about elected leaders who had demonstrated a lack of character, who didn't demonstrate the kind of character that those troops displayed every day. And as I said, Hillary Clinton has a long history of that, not just the character assassination and the politics of personal destruction in which she and her husband engaged to cover up his sex scandals and their many female victims, but also lying to the families of the American fallen at Andrews Air Force Base. Just 2 days after the end of the scenes in 13 hours, when 4 sets of American remains are on the airfield in Benghazi, she told those family members at Andrews Air Force Base that this was a result of the video, and we're going to get the guy who made it. When we all now know that she had told her daughter and the Prime Minister of Egypt the exact opposite 2 days earlier. She lied to their faces for political gain.
She said last night, I did pretty good during that hearing, and one of her supporters brought up her 11 hours. Anytime you hear 11 hours, I want people to think 13 hours. But I digress. Let me play for you the other thing that Hillary Clinton said last night that got my attention. She's been asked about the general server controversy, and she said this.
We've been sorting our way through this because it is kind of a unique situation. I'm happy people are looking at the emails. Some of them are, frankly, a little embarrassing. You find out that sometimes I'm not the best on technology and things like that, but...
So Tom Cotton, number one, she deleted 30,000 emails, and it's not Chris Cuomo's job to bring that up, but the Republicans will. But number two, I'm not that good at technology. That's not very reassuring in the cyber age, is it?
No, Hugh, it's not. And it's that kind of answer that makes people so cynical. Hillary Clinton still acts as if she did nothing wrong and as if the whole controversy is simply cooked up by Republicans, when in fact we now know that she had dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of emails with top secret and even more sensitive information on it. In fact, just last week, the Inspector General for the intelligence community sent a letter, unclassified, to two senators saying that he found top secret special access program information in her emails, some of the most sensitive secrets our government has. In fact, the Inspector General for the intelligence community, not the FDA, but the intelligence community himself, had to get special clearance to review the emails simply to evaluate their content. What did Hillary Clinton do? She accused him of engaging in a political conspiracy with congressional Republicans to hurt her campaign. This is a man who was a career FBI agent who was nominated by Barack Obama and confirmed unanimously by the Senate. I don't think he's engaged in a conspiracy for political purposes with anyone, Hugh. But actually, if he did engage in a conspiracy, that's probably not congressional Republicans. It's probably more likely Barack Obama and Joe Biden, because they know what a disaster Hillary Clinton is for their party.
Agreed. Last question. I'm going to bring this up with Jim Talent when I'm done talking with you. He's my defense guy. Over at Breaking Defense is a story on the increased shipbuilding budget going to subs, specifically to the Virginia class, the Virginia payload module, and the Ohio replacement program. But I didn't know that Ash Carter, the Secretary of Defense, wants to cut the Navy's littoral combat ship program to buy more subs. Does that make sense to you, Tom Cott?
Hugh, both are important priorities. It doesn't make sense to cut one for the other. We should be funding both of those programs fully. Those are both no-fail missions for the United States Navy to both project power, control sea lanes, assure access for global commerce and trade, while also deterring adversaries like China and Russia, and also maintaining our seaborne nuclear deterrent. We shouldn't be cutting either program. We should be fully funding both programs.
He says that if you cut the LCS, you're going to be able to pay for these VPMs, which allow us to replace the cruise missiles, which are right now on 4 of our boomers that don't have nukes, and that we need those desperately. That's our firepower. So you're not persuaded?
No, I mean, I understand the point that Secretary Carter is making about the simple math and the money. But rather than cannibalize one part of our Navy to fund another, why don't we just fund the Navy at the appropriate level so we can get back to the 350-ship Navy that we need at a minimum, both to conduct conventional operations like the littoral combat ship will, but also to control sea lanes and to keep a nuclear deterrent seaborne.
Tom Cotton, it's always a pleasure. I hope you didn't hurt your back shoveling those 6 inches of snow down in Arkansas. We call that, a spring weekend in Ohio, but we hope you're taking care of yourself. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.